It is a heartbreaking case. Dean Jackson is the deputy director of the Cold Case Foundation. He has more than 30 years of experience working in both nonprofits and law enforcement agencies, and he's been taking a closer look at this case as well. He's joining us live tonight. I appreciate you coming on, Dean. A lot of questions here. I think the biggest one, do these remains belong to Kyle? When do you think we'll have an answer?
You know, it'll depend upon how long it takes them to get this looked at by either a forensic anthropologist as well as the ME's office. They have processes, obviously, that they'll go through to be able to identify either both the age, the gender, the race, the age, at least at the time of the accident. So there's a lot that needs to go into that. And it really is a case by case. I think probably as well, they're going to be looking at how much of the remains they can find. The other question is, are there any hairs, any teeth? Because those are items that can also be helped in looking at the DNA.
Right, and not just if it's him, but the next question is, how did he die? So 45 years is a long time. I mean, are forensics at a place where you can determine that after all of this time, decades and decades of a body in the water?
You know, it'll depend upon really what they've found at the scene. Sometimes if we're looking at, for example, on bones and things, if that's all there is skeletal remains, then you can find indications where either blunt force items or, you know, where bullets have hit or something like that would be something that they're going to be looking for. But it does become extremely difficult when you don't have that much to go on. So I think they'll be looking at all those. And obviously, if they can determine, I mean, the three things that they're really focused on right now are going to be, number one, identification. Can they identify without a shadow of a doubt that this is Kyle? And then they're going to be looking at the evidence they have there to try to determine, they'll look at the car as well. Is there anything that would indicate to them a manner or cause of death? And I think this case in particular, the solution after all of those kind of pieces have come together is going to be found in the victimology. And so these are the kinds of cases where it's not going to be one person, I think, stepping up and having all the answers, but it's going to be bringing all that has been done from the time that he was reported missing. There's going to be a whole lot of information there regarding all of the investigation, any witness statements, all of those things will then be put up against all of the evidence that they'll bring from this. And then I think it's really important to spend a lot of time looking at an in-depth victimology. And we find on most of the cases that we work that really the answers are in the victimology. We want to find out as much as we can. I know that seems like a simple thought, but you know, first of all, we don't even know who all needs to be helping us with that victimology. Most people don't think of it that way, but you know, we're really trying to recreate the different stripes of the beach ball. And we're trying to figure out who was this young man, not just from what one person says, but everybody who has a stripe of that beach ball, to understand him in his fullness and try to get an understanding of both his public life, his private life, his secret life. And, you know, when I say that, a lot of times people think, well, is there something nefarious? But, you know, people can have things that they keep very, very close to the vest that aren't necessarily nefarious, but people can have spiritual lives that are, you know, very secretive, that they don't share with very many people, or maybe one or two people. So it's really digging in deep to understand his victimology after they've obviously identified him as his remains, and then also if they can find any thing to give us manner and cause of death.
And if foul play happened, and if there is a case that needs reopening and individuals around that time that need looked at a second time. Dean Jackson, it is unfortunate that all of this is coming after both of his parents worked tirelessly to try to find some answers. But I know there are a lot of people still on the case, and we'll wait for those answers as well tonight. Dean Jackson, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us. Bye.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.